to the computer. Okay.
How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the Science of Fantasy Football. Why the Science of Fantasy Football? You get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use the scientific method. That's just a much smarter way to use statistics. How can I say that with so much confidence in my voice? Well, the scientific method when it comes to statistics means we're letting the statistics guide us to an answer. We might have a hypothesis, but then we test it with a statistical method, and that leads us to a conclusion. And that conclusion might even open up 5 more questions to look at, and then you start the process all together. It's the scientific method, and it is guaranteed to make you a smarter fantasy football player, just like it has done for me and for the fantasy professor. He's a real professor. It's John Bush. And John, week 13, we got 2 weeks to solidify our position in the fantasy football playoffs.
Yeah, the first 4 games were not on my radar, Dennis. My pick'em is the worst I've been. I don't know if too much turkey vapors done got to me, but Dennis, I was a horrible. I didn't see any of those upsets at all. I was sad for KC. I was, I was surprised at everyone. And in my
So,
pick 'em, obviously I
yes,
played, fantasy as I needed to, but just in the overall, I was surprised.
when we did the show on Wednesday, and you even made a comment
Well,
about this, that I sounded so confident in the Chicago game.
yeah,
And that was it, man. That was my most confident pick of the weekend. And it's the pick that I went against the favorite. It's the only pick I went against the favorite. And it's the only pick that worked out. How about that? How about all 4 favorites on the holidays
yeah.
going down? And 3 of those 4 were home teams. That goes against so many things that we think of when it comes to real football handicapping. And it wasn't like bizarre things happened. It was the best teams in each game, the team that played the best in each game. There wasn't a fluke turnover or a fluke penalty call that decided these games. Each one of these teams, Green Bay outplayed Detroit. They deserved that win. Dallas outplayed my Chiefs. Dak had a really good game when it mattered. Baltimore lost against Cincinnati, and Chicago played really, really good against the Eagles despite coming into the game with lots of injuries. But that Bears game I felt the most confident about going into that slate. But remember what we said. 4 very good games where the forecast by Vegas is a lot of points and all 1-score games. We are going to get a treat, and we did.
Mm-hmm.
But I got a question for you that is non-fantasy football related, because the big talk about this Chicago-Philadelphia game,
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia down 15, scores a touchdown
Mm-hmm.
late in the game. So now they're down
Was that to
9.
AJ Brown?
Correct. So A.J. Brown having a very good week again. He was one of my pops guys this week, so I was happy to see that. Of course, Kareem Hunt was one of my pop guys too, and he probably didn't get in the end zone. So not bad. He had like 80 yards.
Yeah, that's good.
So it was good, but I don't think he'll make the top 24 this week. But if he had scored a touchdown, he's in the top 24 for sure. So my pop predictions weren't horrible so far this week. But the question is, so you're down 9, fourth quarter. It's
Yep.
getting late, right?
Yep.
So you're in a situation where you need two scores anyway to win at this point.
Right.
You need either the extra point, and then you need to score a touchdown and a 2-point conversion.
Right.
You're going to have to get a 2-point conversion either way. Otherwise, it's really, and whenever there's a 2-point conversion, whenever it's an 8-point lead, I
Right.
kind of look at that already as a 2-score game.
Right.
Because the chance of converting a 2-point conversion is less than 50%. It is. If you look league wide, they're hitting it less than 50%. So in my mind, that's a 2-score game anyway.
Right.
But 9 points is definitely a 2-score game. And you're running out of time. So you're going to have to get either an onside kick or, real quick stop, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So the question is, I heard some people saying, well, you got to get a 2-point conversion anyway. So you might as well go for it now so you know what you have to do. It's not a mystery. And then I heard some football players say, you know what? There is this thing such as called momentum. And if you just score the 1 point to get within 8, now there's more pressure on the opposing defense. And if they give up a touchdown now, that 2-point conversion isn't just putting them back in the game, it's tying the game up. Is there such a thing as momentum in sports, and can it be measured?
2 questions.
Correct.
I believe human nature would say that extra pressure makes the situation a little bit more, the floor seating on the outcome a little bit greater. It's like there are gamblers that if they increase the stake on their bet, like if in golf is an example, right? If you're playing for $100 a hole, then you say, you know what? If you sink that putt, 1,000. If not, you give me 1,000. They do that to apply that pressure and that tweak of the muscle. There, I think physiologically, I think with adrenaline, whatnot, it is not calibrated to be on the scale. In other words, under pressure, it's probably more logarithmic in action than actually normal, double or triple. So I think the pressure actually can make differences in behavior. That's based on my little understanding of psychology and human nature, but there is something to score the sure thing now, because if you're able to get close to the end zone for that, 6 points and then 2, that's going to cause a consternation. The coaches are going to feel it. It's like, grabbing onto the rope it's greasy, and you keep slipping, and it can cause an issue, and it can't be measured because it's all people's genetics and how they, not everybody is James Bond, right? Cool under pressure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Some people just, explode under pressure and melt. So there's a team, there is the synergy of the team, and they train. But how do you train for something like that? In other words, you're under new situation on these extreme events, and that's why we see a lot of really interesting things. So the question is momentum. I would argue it's not whatever that definition is, which we didn't define the definition.
Yep.
I think the chances of some flukiness increases if you have the pressure. I would have gone for the one and take the eight possibility, especially if you start getting closer and closer. You're going to get the wheel is going to turn strangely, and you're going to get uneven wear on the tire, and things can then the wheel can come off. It could you have an advantage, but that's assuming the other team has practice under that snare. So it's almost an unknowable. You almost got to kind of, has my team, the coach has to be, has my team done well under these pressure situations? And they would have to have the final say. So I would argue that from us looking outside, it would say, oh yeah, go for the eight because you could, you know, the the floor ceiling is going to be higher, and twitchy muscles are going to make the wrong decision, and that. But the coach may realize, man, my team doesn't do well. They may not tell the team that. So I think there's something to that. So I don't think there is momentum in the sense that there's a predestination. Like if you scored, then you've got momentum to score again.
Yeah.
But I think the it's something that could cause, if your team has shown they can handle this extra pressure, it might be to your advantage to go one way or another, versus if the coach knows they don't handle pressure, then I would go for the eighth then. So I would leave it to the coach's view. Since summer they've been practicing with this team in these scenarios.
But I
You didn't
think,
expect that answer, did you?
yeah, that's a great answer. And actually, it is leading into my opinion here, because I think it matters more whether you're home or away. And I'll tell you why. Because there is such a thing as the crowd having an effect on the outcome. It's different in every sport. Okay. In baseball, the home field advantage is more of a case of the shape of the ballpark and the speed of the grass. It's not so much the fan noise involved. In football, the fan noise can really be a detriment to the offense, right? A lot of false starts, trouble communicating. If you're in an 8-point game, that crowd is noisy. They can get crazy. If you're in a 9-point game with 3 minutes left, it ain't as noisy, because the fans are like, that's it. We're losing. I'm out of here. Early exit from the stadium, some of them. But the rest are not as noisy. And in football and in basketball, home court advantage is a big, big deal, because you can't communicate when that crowd is so noisy. And being able to communicate is very important in both games. So, the psychological thing is one thing, and that's different depending on the team. It's different depending on if that team was favored to win and they hate losing, and now all of a sudden they feel they got a shot, versus a team that's bad and they didn't expect to win, and they're like, we're just going to come close anyway. But the missing factor in all this is the crowd noise. Because if you're down 8 with 3 minutes or 3.5 minutes to go, it's a much noisier crowd. And the chance of the offense making a mistake, especially when run by a young quarterback, is a lot greater than a 9-point lead where that crowd is much quieter. So I don't think analytics, I don't think the numbers in the models that these analytics use factor in the psychological or factor in the crowd noise. And that's where I think they can sometimes lead a team astray. And then similarly, when it comes to like 4th and a half yard, 4th and a yard to get a conversion at midfield, I think the chance of converting that, this is not a coin toss, where if it comes up heads 10 times in a row, there isn't a greater chance for it to be heads or tails on the 11th throw. The 11th toss, if it's an honest coin, that 11th toss has no difference in odds. But if you have a team that has not converted the last 8 4th and shorts, the collar gets a little tighter. It is not a coin flip. These are not robots. These are not games of chance. So if you haven't converted the last 8 times, where is your confidence level of converting on that 9th? I would argue that the psychological aspects of sports are not factored in well with analytics. And it's because of that just blindly going off of a chart, oh, this is the play because this says, this analytical chart that I got from some wonky guy who talks about the science of numbers and confuses me so much that I think he must know what the hell he's talking about. That guy's chart isn't fluid. It doesn't take in all of the possibilities. Just like our process of handling injuries or possible injuries or the range of outcomes on a particular player combination is going to be different. Like on our TSA league, TSA redraft league, we didn't start Dobbs. In my draft night out, I started Dobbs this week. 2 different situations. I didn't have an analytical chart that told me, okay, Dobbs, I got him at a 3 to 12 point outcome. He's an automatic bench or he's an automatic start. And I think that's where analytics miss sometimes in real sports, just like we sometimes miss in fantasy sports, because analytics only get you so far. And we're not dealing with a game of chance here. We're dealing with real people and that psychological makeup. It's just like when I have a fantasy matchup, Professor, and I have 2 guys rated pretty tight, and I've gone through every single factor, and they're still tight. Do you think I play the home or the away guy?
Dennis, knowing you, I think you go with the home.
Absolutely. I take any advantage that is given to me. And we know from history that the numbers tell us, numbers don't say that the home guy in that situation is going to outscore the visiting guy a high percentage, but it might be 54% of the time. Right. Like it's just that edge. It's just that little edge. It's no different than playing against a tough defense. what is the outcome? If I got two guys that are close in everything else, they're both playing at home, they're both, same range of outcomes, but I got one playing against an extra tough defense and the other one against an above average defense. Who am I playing? I'm playing the guy with the least restrictive defensive matchup. That's where I think some of this analytics, I don't think they factor all of that in. And in real sports like this situation, I don't think they factor in the psychology. I don't know how they could.
Agree.
All right, Professor, enough philosophizing, as the old joke from the movie Dodgeball goes.
Okay.
Your target data, I want to go over a little bit more of that today.
Okay.
Because I think there are some gems to be looked at here. And I want to look at one specific team.
Okay.
Because these are decisions that I know a lot of folks are going to have to be making. And with Baker Mayfield a little bit banged up coming into this game, I'm looking at Tampa from a whole different standpoint. And I'm very curious to see if the volume, if the target changes in recent time for Tampa gives us a clue. Also, we've talked about the other outcomes or possible range of outcomes with Mayfield, but I'm curious to see what the volume has told us, if anything.
Okay, here is the slate week 6 to 12. So what are you thinking here? I know what I see. I'm just curious what you're seeing.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see if we know yet how Chris Godwin is factoring in. Mm-hmm. Is he hurting Kate Otten? Is he hurting Egbuka? Or is the production drop we're seeing with the Egbuka just a case of not making explosive plays anymore?
The data would suggest there is, in other words, Tez is getting 4 to 5. Shepard's getting 5. That hasn't really changed. What changed was Godwin. So I understand he hit a 9. But that's probably, I mean, if you look for the extremes, if you throw out 4 and 13, then it's 9, 9, 8, 12. So it's close to 10 is kind of the median. So I would say week 11 and 12 is more median for him, but the other ones really stayed about the same. So they actually, Godwin got 4 in there. One might argue he cherry picked from Tez, Abuka. In other words, I don't think it's all Godwin in, subtract 4 from Abuka. I'm not buying that. I'm buying that Tampa Bay can play 4. But it looks to me like Abuke's the W1. He's going to get his 10. But the split of Godwin's effect could be on, I'm guessing, Shepard. Because I think Tez there's enough, but he's going to get his 5. It's Shepard that, look, had a 2, a 3, a 4, 5, 5, 7. So lots, the range of 7 to 2. I mean, Tez is 9 and 3, so those are a lot more high floor and ceiling kind of thing. But that's how I read this. At Abuke's, you can give him his 8 to 10, no problem, even if Godwin goes up to 6. Yes, if Godwin goes up to 8, then it's probably going to hurt Shepard. I think there'll be a loss from all of them. If Godwin stays at 4 or 5, I think you'll see week 12 the same kind of split.
So, in addition to looking at the split among wide receivers, it appears to me that there are weeks where 25 seems to be the max. And then there's other weeks that they're well into the 30s, like they're 35 to
Yeah, week
40
10 would
targets.
be a high. Yeah, they're 30, almost 40 week 10.
So if I'm looking ahead to week 13,
And
I'm
week 12
looking at,
was 30.
yeah, so I'm looking at a week 13 where our assumption with either, let's say, if Mayfield doesn't play or if Mayfield plays, but the injury is bothering him.
Mm-hmm.
The first assumption that I would make in this process is
Right.
we're more likely to be a low volume week
Right.
than I would say 25 is more likely than 40
Okay.
when it comes to the targets this week.
I think a
Yes,
possibility is RBs and tight ends could benefit shorter, and some of the longer passes to the other wide receivers could be cut out. So who's the short players in the wide receivers? They could benefit under that scenario.
it
Who's the
doesn't.
long
Yeah,
catch? Is that Tez?
that's probably Tez. But Tez is Tez is an interesting guy because he is the deep threat, but he's also that yak specialist. So he's just that speedy dude that is the big playmaker. So,
Yeah.
but I'm looking at him with a little less chance. I'm looking at Ibuka maybe having a more like a 4 target week.
Wow. That's
Yes.
extreme.
So I'm thinking maybe more in the 4 to 6 range for Ibuka
That's extreme for him.
than seeing a 10 to 12 range for Ibuka this week. And it's basically because I don't think they're going to air it out as much.
Right.
And I'm a little bit worried about, like you say, does Kate Otten and the White Tucker combination siphon off 7, 6, 7?
Yep.
Oh my
Versus
God.
three.
I just made every grade school kid happy by saying 6, 7.
6, 7. Nice.
But Kate Otten might be more in that 6 to 9 range this
9
week.
is on his upper limit.
9's on his upper limit, but he's
So
done as
again,
much as 12.
if I don't know how they use him, and
Yeah.
that's probably, I probably need to take that chance on these data. I probably should have some type of like short, average, long concept on long, some type of metric there. But uh, yeah, if you look, if it's a week 10 for the RBs and tight ends, and it's a week 6 for the WRs, that's bad news for the WRs. But boy, you should play Otten big time in that scenario.
Yeah.
Of course,
Again,
we play a tight
yeah.
end premium.
Tight end premium changes that formula too a little bit
Yep.
because a 4 catch day is a 6 catch day.
Yes.
So you look at the data, and I kind of in my brain think 1.5 times the targets for a tight end. So a 7 is like getting a 10 target day for a wide receiver. So I look at Otten and I say, even at a 5 target day, that's like 7.5 for a wide receiver. I'm looking at him as, maybe he's towards the higher end. And This is the second week that we'll have Egbuka, Johnson, Shepard, and Godwin all active at the same time. Does it muddy the water? And does it drop in? This was Godwin's second week back.
Right.
He got really they just kicked the dust off of him last week. He was only in third down, a lot of third down plays is where he was sort of getting his opportunities. If they were doing an RPO or they were running, he was off the field. Like they weren't even considering him. So they were pacing him back in. I think they play him more snaps this week.
Right.
Does that cause Shepard to lose time or Johnson? I don't think it's going to cause Egbuka to lose snaps.
No, I think he's locked in at those snaps.
And I think when they run a 3 wide receiver set, I think it's Egbuka, Johnson, and Godwin this week. I think Shepard's the guy who's sort of the odd man out. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just trying to rationalize where I think Egbuka is going to be. It's not that I'm going to bench him.
Can you sit Egbuka even in the extremes? 4 to 13 targets. There's the range.
And the 4 was the absolute outlier.
Worst.
That was the absolute outlier.
I mean, it's probably, if you throw that out, like I said, if you throw out the 4 and the 13, then you're still talking 9-10.
Yeah, and if you look at it, that was the week that he got hurt.
Yeah.
So
I'm settled on 10.
Yeah, I'm settled at it, thinking it's more of this 6 to 8 type of a deal. But this is how the process works, folks, because you got 2 people who really dig into this data, and there's uncertainty. But here's the good part.
Right.
Even on his bad weeks, Egbuka, other than his injury week, his worst 3 weeks are 6, 6, and 9 in fantasy points, PPR.
Yep.
I can kind of live with the 6 because his upside is in the 20s.
Yep.
But I do think his upside this week is more like 18. I'd put him in that 6 to 18 range.
I'm kind of feeling a little bit strong on Otten. I've got a couple of shares that I think are on the bench. I've got to go back tonight now and recalculate in that last flex who exactly is there versus Otten. I've got to make some calculations.
And Otten is a tough one in the FPPC leagues that we play because if you're off by 1 catch, let's say you're off by 3 catches on him.
That's not good.
You're off by 3 catches. That's 4.5 points.
Yeah, that's roughly 5 points.
That
can win or lose you that next level, Dennis. As you know, it's so competitive.
And tight ends usually get you like 6, 7 yards on a bad play.
Yeah.
So they usually, it's not like a running back where a running back can get you negative yards, even though you got the PPR point. With a tight end, they're usually about a 6-point play.
Right.
Meaning 6 yards.
Right.
And then 1.5. So, I mean, you're talking a 2.1 PPR, premium tight end minimum. So you're off by 3, you're off by almost 7 points. Yeah. That's a big miss.
And folks, I just will aside notice the time to dig through this. Okay. It's not, who do I start? Blah. No. No. You're used to that radio mentality, the shooting from the hip. So you're in the process, and we did a process video in our pre-show. I turned it into a process. Part of the process is learning where your time needs to go.
Yes.
This and the fact that Dennis turned here because of the injury and other situations, he's saying these questions deserve more time than I'll have to worry about other situations this week.
So here's one other team I want to look at.
Yeah.
Because and people are going to say, well, of course, you're going to be perfect with your forecast because you're looking backwards to a game that's already happened. No, I want to look at Green Bay because I want to see if what we ended up seeing was forecastable when it comes to when it comes to targets. Because when I'm looking at targets for week 13, for instance, I want to see where we were going into this week and see if we were right. Like Christian Watson, we loved him this week.
Oh, yes.
And Romeo Doubs, we were worried about.
Right.
Did the data back up that decision? Like, did we make the right decision based on the data? And could we have predicted the spike week for Wicks?
Golden is out. So that gave a few targets to the other three. Just if you move them off the slate. There's no evidence that Musgrave would have collected Golden's targets. Jacobs was also moving. So I would argue that 3 to 5, I don't know how many targets he got, but that would have been, the ceiling, and the floor is 1 or 0 targets. So probably 1. So that could have been some variation in targets. I mean, you certainly ain't going to play Jacobs. So then you're not worried about Musgrave because he's not a Kraft. I think the data says that.
Yes.
Golden's out. So notice that week it was, when Jacobs got hurt, he got a 1. So I throw that week 11 data out and think he's closer to a 3, which could be Golden then. Or it could have gone elsewhere. Because look, when Golden was out week 10, there's Wicks at 8. Golden is out week 12. It's Watson. So you're getting, in other words, never was it Doubs. When Golden's out, it never was Doubs. It was either Wicks or Watson. Watson steady at 4 to 5. So I think the situation, Dennis, was do we play Doubs or Wicks as our second deal? Watson's in there of the two. So I think that was forecastable that yes, Watson, but there's, I don't know if it's a coin flip, but a flip between Doubs and Wicks. So was Wicks so surprising that nobody played him? I don't think that's not how you could get the data. But Doubs has variation, so I don't think he was a lock for 8 either. I think he was closer. I mean, the last 3-4 weeks, look at it. It's 3-4, 8-10. But Golden was here and Wicks was out. So I don't think week 9 was a realistic, because today's scenario, Golden's out. And we've seen 8, or we saw 7 for Watson with Golden out.
And what
it looked like Wicks looks like Wicks to me is more sensitive to Golden than Watson and Doubs.
And I like looking at this process because the 2 weeks that Golden was out prior to this,
Yes.
were also weeks that Kraft has been out. So
Yes.
you're comparing apples to apples
Yeah,
here,
it's
you know.
closer to today's scenario.
And if you look at the total targets, the target percentage, I guess, is more what I'd be looking at.
16,
The
14, 15.
Yeah, and when Tucker was last healthy, week 7 and 8, the second wide receiver wasn't even a factor. The first week Watson wasn't even healthy. The next time you had that opportunity, Watson had only had 2 games under his belt and had yet to do much with those opportunities. I mean, he was good, but not great. Watson's 12-7-6 coming into week 11. And week 11 was, and then week 12 is his big spike week. Even though his performance, he spiked with targets to 7, he only had 9 points. But I'd even argue that we kind of knew with Golden out and Kraft out, Watson's like a 7 to 9 target guy. I would have put him in that range. I'm not sure Dobbs's targets are affected as long as Wicks and Watson, or Wicks and Golden, or Wicks, Golden, and Kraft are all available. I don't think Dobbs's targets are going to matter. I think he's going to be a 3 to 5 target guy is his range. Maybe 3 to 6 is his range, although he hasn't had 6. With Watson and with Watson in and Kraft out, look at where Dobbs's targets were. They were pretty low, except for the week that Wicks didn't get a lot of playing time. Just very curious how this, the forecast goes. But again, that down week for Watson since he's come back was when Golden was healthy.
Yep.
Very interesting pattern recognition here. I'm not sure. Looking back, I would have been able to find a reason to start Wicks. It is easy to see that Watson was a great start. Watson has taken over as the lead wide receiver with Golden and Reed and Kraft all out. I think it was reasonable to assume that Christian Watson was going to be a factor. He had 10 targets, only had 4 catches. Got the most out of those 4 catches, but I think it was forecastable looking at the volume data.
Right.
And, sometimes, and again, back to the horse racing analysis here, I like looking back at an outcome we already know when trying to forecast an outcome that we're uncertain of with Tampa Bay. And we don't have a conclusion with Tampa Bay, but we know where the uncertainty lies. We think the target total will be down. We're concerned about Otten and the running backs maybe being at the top end of their ranges, which is not good news for the wide receivers, versus with Green Bay, with Josh Jacobs back, I would have expected more targets from Jacobs than the one he got. And we ended up with Brooks and Brooks and Jacobs and Wilson. So only 3 targets among the running backs, which was identical to last week.
For week 7, they were split.
Week 7, they were split as well. And they were all split to the low side.
And that was with Kraft.
Yes. Very interesting.
Yeah, Wicks, it is, Dennis. Now Now I've got to think about this a little more with Tampa Bay. I'm, my mindset is a little less on Tez, a little more on Otten. I think I was 50-50. Now I'm a little bit skewed to Otten a little bit, folks. That doesn't mean it's all or none. Okay. Because no decision is rare. It's rarely all or none. Rarely. It's probabilities. There's always, even in the horse race, there's always a chaos factor. 10-20% is out there. It's like 20% of the time, nobody has any clue and you couldn't figure it out. The 80% is usually logical winners and those in the mix. But realize it's never 100%. I mean, rarely. I know there's 1 to 9, 1 to 10, and some of these extremes. I understand, but in a normal betting pattern, there's still 20% is just whatever. The horse ate too many oats and is not feeling good about halfway through, something like that. You'd never know, Dennis. Is there any other team
Yeah.
that you think we should spend some time on, or should we go into a couple games for this show and then come
Well, we
back?
might bounce back to this data. Okay, but let's jump into the Vegas data because I want to look at the big picture of what the landscape is, because prior at the beginning of this week,
Right.
I think there were less concerns with Vegas about some of these weather issues. And case in point,
Yeah.
the Chicago Philadelphia game at a 44.5, that did not look like a high wind game.
Yeah.
To me, from even Wednesday.
Right.
And it was a lot stronger. I was expecting maybe 15 to 20 mile an hour gusts, which is not a big deal.
Right.
And we got 30. So all of a sudden we're looking at a bigger deal. Well, I think we have a similar situation right now with some of the Sunday games where from early in the week, it looked like some things would clear.
And it's not.
And it didn't. The only game that I think that Vegas was on top of from the very beginning is San Francisco, Cleveland, because we were expecting bad weather.
Yep.
We don't get bad weather.
Yeah.
But there's some other games like the Carolina game, New York Jets game, Tennessee game, Pittsburgh, and Washington. I don't think the weather is factored in to the over-unders yet. And I'm telling you, there's a possibility of a little more weather than we might have been thinking about, and that might affect the outcomes of some of these games. So first of all, we're looking and we see that our Husky games were all played already.
Yeah.
Our Huskiest
so we'll
of the
have
Husky
to pick
games.
maybe Buffalo, Pittsburgh.
Let's play Buffalo, Pittsburgh for one of our Huskies, and our other Husky.
Do you want to do a matchup?
Yeah, we'll do that one on Matchup Lab over on Sports Affiliation, and let's pick the New York Giants in New England as our other.
And then
our
Frisco,
game.
Cleveland, and Atlanta Jets or Chargers, Vegas. What?
So there's a couple of games that I'm intrigued about here. So let's expand what we're doing a little bit here on our show.
Right.
So the first game that I'm really concerned about how the wind might play in versus where the points are. And also it's one of these big point spread games. Let's look at this Rams Carolina game.
Yeah, I see that. So let me look. That's week 9. So by the way, Dennis, I don't know the skew on Kansas City. This data said lots more passing, less rushing. So, like I said, this is beta testing.
They threw the ball 24 times. I'm sorry, threw the ball 34 times and Mahomes ran 3. So that's 37.
Yeah.
That's 37 versus 20. I would argue that your data was right on the money.
Yeah. Well,
But
I'm going to
but
go
total
back.
plays were way
See,
down.
huh?
Total plays were down. 57
Yeah.
is
But
10.
this is the ratio. This is not
Correct.
play specific. This is
And,
ratio.
and the ratio ended up being, if you look at the Mahomes runs as
Mhm.
passing attempts, because we
Yeah.
know they were passing attempts,
So you're saying it was 30
30
what?
37 to 20.
Yeah.
So a 37,
1.8 ratio, almost 2.
yes.
So I was even a little bit, I mean, I'd said 3, but anyway, the extremes, folks, is not, oh, well, you missed that. No, the
185
extremes
would have
said,
185 was up there. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're missing the point. It's not, it's the spirit of the law, Dennis. That means the extremes are telling you something more than the averages.
Yes.
That's how you take this data. Not that, but this extreme was so extreme, I knew there was going to be kind of ratio that was funky. So I really liked Rice, Worthy. I think
Yes.
I even said, oh, Juju might get, and you said Hollywood Brown might get. I mean, we were
Uh,
debating who that
yep.
third, assuming Kelsey got his, we were
Kelsey's gonna get
assuming
his. Yep.
that on the spillover with the high ratio that some of these fringe guys might stumble into the end zone. I believe Hollywood was
Hollywood
one of
got there.
those, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Hollywood got into the end zone. He gave you a 10-point game.
there you
It's,
go. But that's not
that's
like, oh, nobody could have played him. Yeah, if you thought you needed 10 points in a situation, yeah, he was there. There was something to be said for that. So what teams you want to look at? Rams and
yeah, let's look at the Rams in Carolina
Carolina.
because I'm really
Is
concerned
that
about,
right?
yes. And there's a
Notice
potential of wind.
the extreme says Carolina's rush, 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 not pass. And that in other words, Carolina's natural tendency, Dennis, is a lot more rushing than passing. And
Makes
that
sense.
sounds like in other words, they're ready for that scenario. And the Rams are on the other side, they're more rushed than you might think. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
saying one might argue that given the predictive ratio, it may not be as bad as some other situation. We probably should look at that situation on the other ones we do, Dennis, because that. So my first take is I'm not kind of worried because I think there was already a lot of rushing baked in to those guys relative to passing.
And
Doesn't mean the
that's,
quality of
yeah.
passing on the scoring. It just that was what the data is kind of suggesting to us.
Yeah, and this is a case where
Okay,
Carolina's
my
quarterback you can
analysis
you
was
can factor
suggesting.
in. Yeah.
The data doesn't suggest. See, I fall into that. Bad. I need my dunce hat on that statement. Okay, I
You
loved your
reminded you
Tom.
reminded me the other day of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, it was. It is so rare to be able to chastise you in public that it's like I got to do it. It's like it's one hit on the pinata and you go get candy, and you got to do it sometime, Dennis. And I knew the Dennis pinata was out there when you open yourself up. I said, "Oh, I got to hit that." And laugh about it. So that was funny. I enjoyed that. Rams 33, Carolina 12. Goodness.
Ooh.
Vegas says it's not a game. Rams are going to romp and stomp 45 and a half. I don't know if that's changed a lot. Carolina, they they like to rush. Look what this says. So the rushing ratio says lots of rush. Look what the Rams can do. So they're right into what the defense is best at. So I think that's some of this spread, Dennis.
Yes.
Dowdle or Chuber, and I'm sure it's Dowdle. I'll play him in my flex if I gotta. Looks like Tet might have an opportunity to collect, Dennis, but if that wind is funky, that's not good. I wouldn't play the kicker, and I wouldn't play Carolina's D. Rams, on the other hand, they're passing. They're going to have to work hard, but this is Puka and Adams. I'm not worried. But look at the rushing. Kerman Williams, he probably should get a touchdown here in your betting props, Dennis.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there you go. And Parkey. Parkey might be Barkey here for some points. So I am playing him in a few places, not every place, but a few. So part of it was this having seemed like, he might collect a point or two, especially if the win, maybe a shorter pass, he might be a possession guy. I'm not scared of Parkey. I think his floor is good enough. I think his floor moves up a little bit with the tight end premium, to get that 8 points, that 8 to 10 might be worth a play, Dennis.
Yeah, and a rain threat here too for Carolina. I'll add that. Rain and wind are both a threat.
Carolina is 10 efficiency out of 100. Rams 96. Very skewed, hence the skew on the spread. Carolina loves to rush at home, 18% passing. Dennis, 29% less passing at home. That's a weird, and it completely flips when they go on the road. Isn't that interesting? Very strange team that way. Rams are improving last 3 weeks versus the season, and being their home, they're going to want to rush 9% more, pass 9% less. So it's not as dramatic. The extremes are with Carolina's behavior. And I think they're going to be out of their tendency because of that extra tough situation. That's going to knock them for a loop. I think they're going to be having to pass more, and hey, wind could blow it into some arms. It could be an interesting, but Tet could be a good collab. I mean, he could get his touchdown and lots of targets, actually. May not be quality targets with the wind, but still, I could see that. And I think Rams get ahead. I think Kerman Williams might. I have him at a 63, like a RB2 this week. Given this weather, this might go up a little bit. But I love Puka and Adams, but they're low end wide receiver ones this week. So it could be a play them both scenario, Dennis. I just worry about the wind on play them both. I hope I don't have them both, but I think we do in our River City Crawfish. We've got Adams.
Yes.
We did well on our other ones. We're still in first place. That's so crazy. Anyway, that's what I say about this game. I think Rams should win, but I think it could be more rushing than we think.
Yeah, and I like the fact that it's more rushing than we think, because I'm going to lean into Kyron Williams a lot in this game. Carolina, maybe Bryce Young ends up scrambling his way to survive and to be, at or above median for quarterback production. Ted is a good yak guy. He's a good short pass guy. So he may not be as affected by some rain and wind. In fact, sometimes rain gives that wide receiver a little edge because he knows where he's going. So a little slick field gives him the advantage. Obviously, you're playing Stafford, you're playing the wide receivers for the Rams. I do like that above average matchup for the tight end, plus a little rain and wind, puts it into a tight end situation. Plus, he's a good red zone threat as well. So, boy, that's a lot of eating from the Rams side of the field. I do like the Rams to win this one. They're my pick in a Survivor League this week.
Nice.
And 45, my goodness, they might need 33 points to win this game. So I would tweak on the under, but I'm not sure I'd make that bet on that one. Okay. Let's look at another game. And again, we have no threat of rain in this game, but it's a very interesting game. Houston and Indianapolis, I'm kind of curious about this over under because Houston's got a really, really strong defense. I'm kind of concerned about where this number is. 44 and a half or 44 is a pretty healthy over under.
Yeah.
That seems a little high to me, and I'm kind of curious about looking at the defenses in this game.
Okay. Indianapolis is the power ranks are good versus Houston. I don't know where they're
Middle
at,
of the
but
pack,
yeah. So
smack dab
the
in the middle.
ratio, let's see. Houston is wanting to pass more than rush, Dennis. So Woody Marks, be cautious. He's in some flexes, but it's not a slam dunk this week
No,
for him. Looking at Indianapolis is more skewed to a balance to a little bit of a rush, more pass less, which is not good for our Pittman shares. But Pittman, he just needs a catch or two, and that'll make your day. So I'm not overly worried about Pittman, but just be aware that that's the skew that Houston's going to want to rush more. And then you might think, gonna rush more. So we'll see. That's eight. Let's find eight here. And all these hard figures, Dennis, are up on our site, so you can see all this data that I'm using here. It
ugh.
26, 17, 4.5, 44. Houston is all about the passing, the kickers, but don't play the D's, but pass, pass, pass. And I think, did I say Houston is more skewed to the passing this week? I forgot. Dennis, I forget. Yes.
Yep,
So their tendency is exactly what the defense is going to give them for Indy, Dennis. So
interesting.
that's very intriguing and less rushing. There's a little bit more resistance on the Woody Marks rushing. So just be aware, tap your expectations for Woody. Probably got to play him in a few leagues, but if there are other opportunities, I think we're okay. Indianapolis, wow, look at the Houston. If that's what you're citing on this spread or you're worried, if you picked Houston to win, I'm not sure I'm surprised given these DAPs here. Indianapolis is also declining in efficiency. Of course, they've been so good. It, you know, they've been 100, one of the top. So the last 3 weeks it hadn't quite risen there. So they're going to get a declining, but I wouldn't worry. But they're going to want to rush more than pass. But I'm not sure that tendency holds up in this scenario. I know Jonathan Taylor, they're going to try. I think early they're going to try, and if Taylor can win that battle, then I think they'll keep it balanced. If he can't, Dennis, I think they're going to have to let fly to try to. I think Houston's going to have some opportunities to stay up with them. This could be last team gets a chance to win. Houston away, they love to pass 8% more, 16% less rushing, and that's exactly what the defense is giving them. So the defense is playing into Houston's hand, not in Indianapolis' hand. So I'm not buying the spread. I'm not buying the over under. I'm not betting them either. But I think Houston could upset or is close. My pick 'em doesn't look as strong as some other the thing. I think I picked Indy, but I was not happy having to pick that.
Yeah, I'm on the Houston side on this game, and I was a little surprised at where the spread was,
Yeah,
but I was more surprised by the over under. I'm kind of thinking this is an upper 30s point
yeah,
type of a game. If I'm wrong and Indy can get it done, then that's Well, I'll be wrong on
I
both.
think Taylor, Dennis, is the fulcrum for all
Taylor's
this.
the key. Taylor is the key. But here's the problem that I see is you've got an injured quarterback who looked lost in the fourth quarter against KC last week in Daniel Jones,
Right.
going up against an extra tough matchup, and he's going to play, folks. He's off the injury list, but they said he had a hairline fracture in his leg. So, you know,
Who's his
it's
backup?
his backup this week would be the rookie Riley Leonard,
Ooh.
because Anthony Richardson is still on IR. So that gets really tough. So I like the chances of Houston pulling
Given
off
the
this
defense,
upset.
given
Yeah.
what I'm seeing here, given the tendency, like I said, you're going to make me think about my pick 'em.
And I have a couple of leagues where I'm having to play Jaden Higgins as a flex. So I'm not as unhappy about
No,
that. You're up.
and I'm liking Schultz a
Schultz
lot
is looking
more.
good. Nico Collins, of course, is a
Yeah.
must start if you drafted him. Woody Marks might stumble into the end zone this week. So even though he doesn't have
I
a
feel like
favorable
he's
matchup,
closer to his floor than ceiling.
he's getting the volume.
Yeah.
So he's kind of he's not a must play, but he's kind of a
He's not a must sit
yeah.
either.
No, he's not a must sit. So Houston, you crank up any of their guys with a little bit of confidence, considering what's going on. Plus the fact that I think the defense is going to give them a lot of
Oh,
opportunities.
Dennis, you're not going to believe this. I just looked at my pick 'em.
Yep.
I'd already picked Houston.
Yeah, I kind of thought you might be on
Yep.
the
I
Houston
didn't
side
even
here.
know, Dennis. That shows you how silly I am. Yeah,
And,
I'm
and
picking Houston for the upset myself.
and with that, folks, you got to go with the professor because he has been
Well, it's been
on
lean these
a
first four
roll,
games,
folks.
Dennis. I've been, like I said, those turkey vapors. That bubbling skin, those lipids were floating in the air, and they hit my receptors in my nose, and it all of a sudden it just I got over exuberant about favorites, Dennis. I was betting too many favorites at the track yesterday, and that was
Oh boy,
costing me. So
that'll do it.
I gotta shake. It's like the horse. Got to shake my head and get into the game here. I got to change leads.
Well, you will occasionally not make the right diagnosis when it comes to a horse race situation
Yeah,
either. I got absolutely lucky at the harness races last
nice.
week because I had a horse that I liked. He was like 5-1,
Yeah.
which in harness racing that's like having a 10-1 shot in the flats. And he was 5-1, and the only concern I had was can he get a good trip, because there looks to be a lot of speed in this race. They're getting ready to crank up. The favorite was coming from the outside and lots of speed. And I figured, well, they're going to get a trip behind the favorite and, maybe he can wear him down the lane, that kind of thing. He goes out to the lead. And I'm like, wait a minute. He's supposed to be just riding behind this favorite. The favorite did not. The favorite broke fast from the outside, but hung up and tucked in like fourth or fifth.
Hmm.
And my horse, who I was figuring would be up front, but just off the pace, he said like fast fraction to the quarter and a half. I'm like, what in the hell is going on? Nobody threatening for you for the lead. I'm sitting there 5-1, going into the far turn, thinking, this is a dumb bet. I'm not cashing. And he slows the pace down in the third quarter of the race. And nobody makes a move on him. It just tightens the pack up, but
Right.
nobody makes a move. And all of a sudden, he's fresh for the final quarter. And the favorite pulled with cover, like everything going good for the favorite. and couldn't close in the lane. And my horse won, and I cashed a $12 win ticket on a race that I thought was over at the half. Like, so yeah, I had the right idea. I knew he's got good speed, but he's not the top speed in the race. I thought there would be like 3 or 4 guys going out for the lead, and I thought maybe that's why they'll wear down the favorite. Total wrong process. Like my forecast sucked, and I still lucked into the win because the driver knew what the hell he was doing. And sometimes that's what happens in fantasy football as well. Let's look at one more game because this is another game where I have a lot of decisions to make. Let's look at the New Orleans Saints versus the Miami Dolphins.
Okay. You always have to pull this one out. Saints, let's see, is anything happening? Saints are going to want to rush more than pass, Dennis. That's going to be their tendency. So Devin Neal time.
Oh, yeah.
Or whoever. I don't know. Who's his second now, Dennis? Have we heard?
It'd be Estime, but the good news is Neal is trending in the right direction to play and is off the injury list.
Let me ask you this. Is Estime a surprise dollar pickup because
yes, yeah.
I think Kamara could be shut down?
I think Kamara's done for the season.
Okay, then that means Estime, folks, he has a little spark from last year, Dennis. Do I remember that right? That he had some flashy games?
He has the potential to have some flashy play.
Okay, so I need to look at that.
He'll be behind Neal this week. They'll ride Neal for all he's worth.
But that could change next week.
It could change. And Neal came into the week as questionable. He's off the injury list, but it's one hit away from, always that next man up is always attractive.
I'm thinking tonight I'm going to dollar play Estime on some of these situations here.
Already added him on a couple of teams.
Okay. Miami is balanced. So New Orleans is going to want to do some more rushing.
Yep.
So we might even get some Estime play. Miami's going to balance. I think Waddle figures against the defense here a little bit. So I'm kind of going to play all my Waddle shares, and so I'm trying to look at the game. What number is the
number 5?
5. Okay. 5. Dennis, we're talking a lot today.
Yes.
I guess we're exuberant over that. 26-14, -6, 41 towards the squirrel end. Look at Miami, though. If Waller plays, Dennis, is he still on the Miami team?
He is, but I don't
think he's playing.
Believe they brought him off the IR list yet. That doesn't mean they won't.
Yeah, just watch that. That could be a surprise play in your betting. I am streaming both defenses leaning to Miami this week, as a streamer. Looks like it's tough against Miami. New Orleans, on the other hand, should have opportunity, especially Juwan Johnson, who I'm playing all my shares this week.
Yep.
And Neal is fine, maybe even an Estime if I need. So I'm going to look at that. This looks more balanced. If Miami's so damn good, they've got a tough defense. So is 26 really real? Is it closer to 24, 20, and Saints a little higher, 18, 20? I mean, if New Orleans wins, I'm not shocked. I think it's closer, though, Dennis, and I could see this being a squirrely game. I just don't know if I'm buying the spread yet, given the DAPS. Miami's 42 efficiency out of 100, New Orleans 5, so they very sucky. Miami is balanced. Look at that. I said the predictions balance. Both teams are declining the last 3 weeks versus their season. That means they've been doing better early in the season versus recently. New Orleans away, It's all about the rush, 4% passing, 20%, 6% less. So got to play Olave if he plays, but if he doesn't play, I know Velda is one, or Vele. I don't know how much I'm leaning into him given this proportion here. It looks like it's short passes and Dewan Johnson and Devin Estime show versus if Olave's out. If Olave's out, this could be a little more split here. So a lot of it, I think New Orleans' chances, if Olave plays, I think they got a shot at upsetting. If he doesn't play, I think it's a Miami game. So I think it's hinges on Olave there.
I agree wholeheartedly. I picked New Orleans to upset this week in the
But
TSA.
if Olave doesn't play, are you still
Olave
happy?
doesn't play, and I'm on the fence. But I'll tell you this:
Yeah.
I will take New Orleans with the 6 regardless, because even if they don't win this one, I think it's going to be close. I think this is an under game
Mm-hmm.
because what I've been seeing in the pattern of Tua's games, when he faces a tough defense,
Mm-hmm.
Miami, it's all about a Shane or nothing. So I would not in this game. There's no way I'm playing Tua at quarterback. There's no way I'm playing Malik Davis or Malik Washington as their second wide receiver.
Right.
No, thank you. I don't even care if Waller's active. I'm not playing him. I will play Waddle because Waddle is just the big play guy. I mean, his floor is like 8 points, so
Right.
you got to kind of go with that. A Shane, of course, you don't even think. I mean, this is a player whose worst game is 12 points
Right.
this year. His logical floor is 15. There aren't a lot of players in the
Right.
league that have a ceiling at 15. So A Shane's an automatic start. I don't care what the defense matchup is. I love Neal in this situation because I don't think Estime would have long enough to come up to speed on being ready. Of course, if Neal goes out with an injury, that all changes. But I think they're leaning into 22 touches for Neal minimum.
Wow.
So yeah, I think they're going to lean into
Sound
Neal
like
very
Neil's
heavy.
more a flex worthy than I was thinking.
Yeah, I think Neal's almost for me with the defensive matchup of Miami being soft and New Orleans wanting to run. I'm almost tempted to say Neal is for a
RB2.
guy that is coming off the bench. He's as close to a must start for me. I've got to have a real good 4 pack of running backs ahead of him because when it comes to the flex and FPPC,
Yeah, I
if
like
they're
running backs.
if they're close, I go running back.
Yep.
And especially when I got a running back who's got an above average matchup
Yep.
and should have above average volume is what your data is telling me. And folks, I don't care this data that the professor's trotting out. He'll tell you it's beta test.
It
It's a
is.
beta test, okay? And don't live or die by it. But whenever I've seen the professor put data out, it ain't dog meat, folks. This is good data
Well,
to chomp on.
we'll be working. This could be maybe not a poster this year in the expo, but down the road, I definitely want to follow this up with a poster.
Yeah, and
This,
again,
yeah,
I'm not saying you look at this data and you follow this over anything else. What
right.
I'm saying is you factor this data into the mix. 1.85 was the passing to rushing ratio for the Chiefs this week.
Yep.
That was a hit in my books because you were at the top end of that number. Did you hit the upper whisker? No. But the data analysis, the analysis of the data said that even if you're off by a considerable portion,
Yeah.
it's still lean into the pass heavy variety. And sometimes, folks, with data, it's not the absolute number that's important. That's just a level of confidence that it'll be above median. It doesn't mean it has to verify to be good. If I've got a floor of a guy like Ashane at 15 points and his ceiling's at 45, I don't have to hit that 45. That's the upper whisker. But I'm going to be in the 20s. I feel pretty confident that he's going to be in the low to mid 20s with points this week, because they're going to have to get a big game out of him to hold up this favoritism against New Orleans. I don't think they're going to get it done, because I think Tua is going to turn the ball over, and I think New Orleans is going to get a shot. But this is a game where I will factor that data in and lean into the New Orleans tendencies for Devin Neal. Yeah, you're playing Olave if he's starting. And yes, Juwan Johnson looks good this week. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out all the data from the professor, folks, and you will learn a lot. You'll see some patterns. Hey, if you recognize some patterns that we aren't talking about here on the show, let us know that as well, because we're always looking for that feedback. Head on over to the sportsaffiliation.com. Lots of great shows over there, including our matchup lab that is going to be coming up right after this show. And yes, come on back next week for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks.